Hey everyone, Atara here, and we have the Damn Show 34. This is a conversation with Starlordy and Wei. Starlordy is, of course, the CEO of Oni, and Oni just went through a new ownership transition, and Wei is part of that ownership group. So this is their first recorded interview with on them talking about the past, present, and future of Oni and what rebirth looks like. And so we're so excited to get to you. It was a great conversation.
Hey, yeah, no, we're super, super excited. It went great. A lot of information from them. We are all Oni holders, so we're in the same shoes as you guys. We just want to see this project, succeed and go back to their initial value and reputation. And I hope you're gonna like what we did here for you.
Yeah, based on the chat we had, I mean, I was blown away myself. The business mind frame that Wei comes to this group with, knowing what Starlordy's done historically to pull us through dark times. I'm really excited about where the future of Oni Force is headed and the rebirth. Let's jump into this episode.
And before we do one last thing, we also want to announce that we have dubbed this week Oni Week. And so this Thursday on the Damn Live, the Legends of the Enclave are going to be joining us on stream live. And we're excited to host you guys. And so it's Oni Week at the Damn. So we hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you guys on Thursday. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Damn Show. We have a really couple special guests today, and we're so excited to talk to them. We have Starlordy and Wei. Really quickly, Starlordy, let's start with you. Let's give a quick background. Starlordy, who are you? And what do you do in the NFT space for the people that don't know?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for having me on. I guess I am the CEO of OniForce. I have been with OniForce since February of last year. Before that, I was in entertainment. I worked in the film industry. I have a commercial production company, so I did a lot of commercials for like big brands like Nike and Samsung and Kia, that sort of stuff. And then just have always been involved in technology and storytelling, and that's kind of what led me to NFTs. And I got lucky enough to be put on OniForce, and kind of the story wrote itself.
Amazing. And Wei, let's go to you. Give a quick background. Who is Wei for the people, if this is your first introduction?
Hey guys, my name is Wei Joe. I'm currently got a couple of titles. I'm currently the CEO for Coins.ph, which is the largest licensed fiat and crypto exchange in the Philippines. I'm also a strategic advisor for a Web3 fund called OFR, Old Fashioned Research, which I worked with pretty closely with Starlordy here in terms of the putting together a consortium to acquire OniForce. Prior to sort of these ventures, from 2018 to 2021, I was actually the CFO at Binance. So joined about a little bit less than a year after CZ had founded the company, and then really helped to scale that business on a global basis. My responsibility there included basically investments, and also sort of landing in basically different regulated jurisdictions with fiat and fiat exchanges. So sort of was at the core of the crypto world for about 3.5 years. Took a little bit break, but now really excited to get into the I won't even say get into the NFT space, because I had owned a bunch of stuff in 2021. But I think from here, really want to sort of take some of my skills and experience in terms of growing. I think OniForce from it just an NFT project, I think I said before, into a sustainable business.
Very cool. And what we want to cover in this interview is we want to cover the saga. It's the past, present, and future, to give the listeners that maybe don't know what has happened. And so we'll start with the very, not necessarily the very beginning, but we wanted to start and give a little bit of context. So Oni's minted in middle of 2021, and it's now February 2023. To me, I don't know about you guys, it feels like a lifetime has passed. And
that's a lifetime in Web3.
It's an absolute lifetime. It's like a decade. And yeah. Starlordy, I'm sure you've seen a lot of trends rise and fall when you were whether when you were just a degen and
Mhm.
then as a CEO of OnlyForce, and I want to really tap into that perspective. What
Yeah.
are some things that stuck out as to you as good and bad moves that NFT projects did based on your perspective of being a degen and also CEO of a fairly major project?
It's a great question. I think early on I saw right away that the space was headed for some sort of troubles because people were like printing money, like, dropping really awful projects with like very dubious people running them. And I think that was probably due to the excitement of the growth of the space. But when I saw like the types of projects and the amount of money that they were like making off of mint, I knew that that was going to be a problem, because when you were digging into like their public statements and stuff, and they would release a roadmap, and it's like, just for me, like operating for a long time and like having worked with a lot of big brands and helped launch projects and products and stuff, it's like I already knew like what people were promising was like not possible based on like even the amounts of money that they were raising. And so I felt like, okay, something is going to crash here. I felt like it was almost necessary though, just because it's like kickstarting the space almost and getting people
Mhm.
like, into it. But I knew there was going to be a time for correction, which is where I think we are now. Um, but at the time, like before I joined OniForce, it was like what we call like the golden era, right? Like the good old days is like everybody was making money like left and right. Like you barely had to try and you
Yeah.
just make money. And even just as a trader or flipper, like you don't even have to do any due diligence. You're just like, oh, are enough people talking about this? Yeah, I'm probably gonna make money on it. And like, so I think like I saw that kind of cavalier attitude, and I realized like when I came into OniForce, the first thing I was kind of my philosophy was like, let's treat this like more sensibly, like a real business, and let's be like really honest with the community about what we can or can't do. Even if they don't like it, even if they want to hear us promise everything, like we're going to scale it back and just promise like what we actually can deliver. So I think that's kind of how I entered the space and kind of what I thought was important.
Yeah, and just one quick follow up on that, Starlordy. When you saw like tokens doing a secondary collection, Oni hasn't necessarily done that. They had the frames, which is separate, and we
Mm-hmm.
can get into that. When you saw every project launching a token, I'm sure these are tempting things that were on the horizon or in like the meeting rooms on like should we and should we not. And so I guess what I'm trying to understand is what kept you guys from kind of indulging in that, because a lot of them in now hindsight does seem like an indulgence, because many projects should not have launched a secondary collection and many projects should not have launched a token.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we talked about those things. I think the reason why I was against it, and actually the founders were against it too, is that, well, for personal reasons. Number one, our floor price was garbage when I came in. I think it was like zero point 0.2 or something like that. So it was like any increase in supply would have destroyed our project, because we would have to be like providing utility for multiple collections when we haven't even figured out utility for one.
Right.
The tokens thing was kind of interesting, but even then, like I'm kind of like a cautious person when it comes to um, launching products for the sake of it. And I felt like even just observing the way that the crypto space was moving, it's like, you launch a token, but if there's no real value, or if there's not going to be value, like you're really just sucking liquidity out of somebody's wallet. And so I think in the end, the answer is like, I came in, we decided to prioritize the community. Every single decision we made was just literally like, is this good for the community long term or not? And so
Mhm.
anything that if it was questionable or no, then we just avoided it. So slight little alpha ish, not really alpha because it's out there. The Our collections are ready via contract for tokens if we wanted it. So we did future proof ourselves. We just didn't make the decision to pull the trigger on that because we felt like it was not beneficial for the community. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Starlord, you did an incredible job of leaving the Oni Force through some pretty turbulent times. Like you said, the floor price was in a pretty tough spot when you came in. But I also know there's so many, like you said, the focus on community was so resonant for so many of us, right? We got so many legends, just absolute enclave legends who held it down through those turbulent times. Like my first ever PFP was a Oni Force, and I cried. I literally cried tears the day that I got it. Like I'll never forget it. Through 10K TF, I was able to level up to get an Oni, and it was my first PFP, and I cried tears, like bawling, and I was like, I finally made it. Like this is what making it feels like, for real. And then like just to watch, and then that was in the middle of the slide, and then we got Kaku and Crow and Bobby and Yuli. We've got so many absolute legends, right? A-Bomb, A-Dog, Dilly. I could go on and on and on, right? But that being said, so many absolute legends that really helped carry this project through some of those tough times. Was that community focused when you came in? I mean, did you recognize that was kind of what's needed at the time?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love communities. I've built multiple communities in the past, and it's kind of one of my core strengths, actually. My philosophy when I came in was like, okay, we're already crashing. Most of the people have left, but the people who are still around, like they truly are there because they care. Like they really believe in the project. And so when I came in, the first thing I said is like, look, I don't care what's happening. If we can't make our community that's here now happy, then it's pointless. So I think we kind of shifted all our energy to making sure, like, if there's 10 people in the Discord, I don't care. Like, we're going to talk to them. We're going to make sure they hear us, and we incorporate their opinions and thoughts into the project. And I think as that started happening, like, people started realizing, like, oh, like, it's just us, but I can still have an impact on this project. And that's what I think built the trust to the point where when other people started kicking the tires and coming around because they heard that we might be having a comeback or something, it's all positive stuff that they're hearing, And so I think that's why it was really important to just focus on making sure the community was happy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And about the community, we know that the community itself has been asking for an acquisition for a while. So what my question is more about, this is for both of you, Wei as well. First, when did Oni started to think about an acquisition, and when did the new group start a conversations with Oni about the new acquisition? I'm kind of interested in this part.
I can answer the first part. I think the ownership group or the founders were interested in acquisition pretty much from day one when I came on board. It wasn't like, I would say 100% maybe. There was still a little question mark, but they were definitely like looking for it because they recognized that they weren't really the team to continue managing the project. As far as like how Wei got involved, I guess Wei could tell that story because I'm not sure exactly. Or we talked a little bit on the Twitter space the other day, but I think he has a perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it's around third quarter last year. I had an ex colleague who's actually Gotra, who's actually very involved in the Oni community. He's one of I think he's one of the kami holders, or actually has two kamis. And then for me, I was partly running sort of a business full time in the Philippines, and then Colin splits his time out of Manila, so we kind of sort of caught up there. But secondly, he knew that I was advising in sort of as a major LP in a fund called OFR that was launched in the first half of last year. And he basically thought that our fund could be the right owner, or could help the project in many ways, especially with sort of our connections and resources. I think in Asia specifically, because I think the mythology of Asian whales, and then also sort of like the origin story of Oni being the first anime manga sort of like PFP, as well as I think the success of Izuki. I think in sort of this part of the world, I think were sort of some of these theses. And then for me, personally, I've done a lot of deals, right? So sort of like I've spotted things, have invested in people. And what really drove me to it is actually the conversations along the way with Starlordy. I think we talked quite a bit, to be honest. For me, just to get to know the people that I'm going to be working with, because I think at the end of the day, like people build things, right? Things don't get built by themselves. So sort of like, and then I kind of understood the dynamic behind it, right? So in my mind, it was like, it was like a semi-distressed asset, right? And then for me, I think there is glory here, right? Because it kind of lived it, it has so much potential. I think, and then what drew me in the most, forgot to mention, I mentioned 2 days ago in the space, was that I love the artwork. Like I don't know, I don't know what it is. I just love the artwork. Like everything about it just screams, jumps at it and be like, I gotta get my hands on a few of these. I mean, I bought a bunch of them. It's decent, but it was just sort of like, and then for me at that point, if you guys remember, there were a bunch of stuff happening with other projects as well. So for me, it's sort of like, okay, there are, including, I think, if you guys remember, Pudgy Penguin was acquired early last year by Luca. And then he sort of like, did a wonderful job in terms of turning that around, right? Because for them, that was basically a bunch of young guys, it was just a bunch of kids basically in LA that did it, and then didn't really know how to go beyond just sort of a simple drop. But sort of for me, sort of I had seen, different path different projects have taken to basically, keep their, like, like, to be successful, right? And I sort of like, if you had no idea what success looks like, then I think it's very confusing, right? But I think here we at least kind of see what success look like, and I actually think we can actually do things, like copy what's good and then do things that make us stand apart, right? I mean, that's standard business procedure. So for me, it's like, okay, then it becomes sort of a business decision. Like, can we build a sustainable business out of it? And I think absolutely we can after talking to Starlordy, especially on sort of like, if you look at the origin of our project versus the other guys, it's actually like, like really good fucking artists are part of like our core founding, right? That's why it's important for us to bring back Cro-Magnus and I Am Complex, sort of get them involved. But and then, like, getting more creators involved is something that I think is going to be key part of our future plans.
I did love the way that you just mentioned Luca in that, right? Like I was just talking to Starlordy a little bit behind the scenes, but like the Luca Starlordy, like it's one thing to start a project and roll with a project that like starts off doing great. It's another thing to come into a project and build it up from the ground floor back up, right? And just, yeah, like your way, just an incredible grounded thesis in the way you came into the project. Because I mean, I mentioned a few, but like I think about Nano, I think about like there's so many people in the community that are just ready to build right now. And so to have that support coming in that really understands what's going on here, I can't wait for the future of the Enclave myself. Let's fucking go. Starlordy, Luca, y'all are the goats in the space right now for sure. I got the world of respect for both of y'all.
I don't even know if Wade likes it, but I refer to him as King of the East because I believe that he's going to be like in NFTs, like he's going to be like, yeah, he doesn't care about that stuff. But in my mind, I'm like, when I first talked with Wade, actually even Gulcha told me beforehand, because I was like, I think on our first group meeting, I was like, oh, do we need to like prep Wade? He's like, nah, man, like he's got this. Like, just let him get in the room. Like, you'll get it. You'll get the vibe. And like, he was right. Like, as soon as like Wade came in, I was like, oh shit, like this is like the guy. Like when he says like he believes OniForce could be $1 billion brand, I totally believe him. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like I believe you, you know? So I think the space needs more people like Wei and Luca and hopefully myself. I think like it needs people who actually have the right intentions for the space as a whole, but also has the ability to actually execute. So I think you're going to see a lot more great stuff from us.
And on the path to becoming $1 billion brand, I know there's a lot of strategies and partners, and the way you mentioned it, you said that there's some key strategic partners that you have that the OFR group has that you think could be leveraged. Is there anything more you can share right now about what you have planned?
I mean, like, without sort of like going too much detail, I mean, a lot of it goes back to sort of, I would say, you just look at my previous experience. So even before sort of my three plus years at Binance, right? Sort of like, we have a network, like during those 3+ years, I basically have built like a network of people, both in and outside of that organization, all over the world, like whether it's in India, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in Nigeria, Australia. And then sort of like I know all the crypto exchanges in Southeast Asia, in Japan, in Europe, in Korea, right? And that's and obviously, know that the core here is basically we're still like a US based IP, right? So I think, and if you look at sort of like, I was at the events in NFT Paris, and I feel like like the subset of people that kind of know about NFT gets it, and the part of that community is like this big. It's like minuscule, right? It's like the size of a tic tac, right? And then it's time for us to sort of really grow that on a global basis, right? And then that sort of part for me, it goes back to sort of what Starlordy says about like let's build that community, right? And if you look at sort of the success of Binance, part of why they're so successful in such a short time is their ability to basically build, these like rabid fans of a crypto exchange of all things, right? Because the thing is you can whatever the market floods about Binance and CZ, he's always done users right. That goes back to sort of like whether he says it, he does. It's like you preach, what is it? You do what you preach, right? And then that goes a long way already compared to sort of the competition in the space, right? So especially for crypto exchanges.
Yeah.
But I think. But I think it's actually more than that. So it's more than just sort of. I think that's one bucket on the community side. I mean, that I think is really cool, right? And I think we have an IP, and we have artwork, that I think has resonance with a global audience. It's not a regional specific thing. It's not a sort of if you're a fan of anime, if you're a fan of sci-fi, if you're a fan of these just like cool, really cool, like edgy graphics, all of these things, you can be a part of this community. And I think that's what makes NFT PFP so fucking cool, is that you could be anywhere, right? And I think the borderless nature of it, I think a lot of us don't really realize until we run around the world and talk to people, and I think that's sort of something that I think is possible, right? Because I think that's the first one. To answer sort of the other part, I think, yeah, I mean, I think, and to sort of that's sort of more specific, I think, to what we want to do with Oni. But secondly, I think more specifically, I think with these attentions, with all of this, I think you're going to like, I mean, you're already seeing that with Blur, right? We're going to see a lot more liquidity coming into our space. That's, whether they're sharks or smart money or whatever the heck they are, I think we're just going to do, right? And then with sort of new money coming in, um, you know, investors, right? People who do want to invest their money into this. They're gonna want to talk to people who can actually, who are coherent, right? Like they want to know that this project is going to be around. There's well funding, whether it's funding, whether it's direction, right? Whether you got to talk a little bit of dollars and cents. Into what you're doing, right? So the financial fiscal responsibility. I think all of these things become important, or will become more important for a project. Like I think I don't want to talk down sort of our group, but it's still like I see a lot of parallels. I think with like early token projects that raised a lot of money and then didn't really, some deliver, some didn't. But like those that delivered, you have Ethereum, right? You have I mean, you have a lot of these cool projects that really delivered, and then now they're 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion, right? So I think that's sort of where we are. I think in terms of for the NFT world. So
Very cool. So it sounds like there's a mass liquidity coming, and there's a lot of connections that's going to really increase distribution and build more rabid fan bases. And I think one thing you said, Wei, it's very salient. It's the fact that it's hard. It's really hard to get a project that has art that resonates versus the other way around, where it's like if it's a popular project and the art doesn't, like, getting something to resonate with people is really hard rather than making the number go up. And so you guys already have that. It's a really strong foundation to build on. And that leads into what you guys are calling your next chapter of Oni, which is the rebirth. And you've mentioned
yeah, I
already a
mean,
lot.
I like this is like and I think like not to toot sort of like horn. I think like Asian culture is kind of like having making its gradual slow advance on the world as well. With like K-pop, and then with like anime, with a lot of these like just cultural things. I think you will have like a cultural moment a little bit. Like I have a friend that I came to NFT Paris with. I mean, he's throwing K-pop concerts. Not even tier one, but like tier two K-pop festivals in London and in Paris, and these concerts were selling out. And then he's telling me the audience there is like it's completely colorblind. It's yellow, black, white, brown, whatever. Like it's actually completely agnostic in terms of like what that fan bases look like. You can't. No marketing company is gonna be like, oh, this is your fan base, right?
Yeah.
And then I was at dinner, like I'm in Zurich, obviously meeting with people with money, right? Like, and I gave two European like not colleagues but friends, and then they loved it. I was like, Nope.
Right.
Like, so people like I think people see it and be like, oh, I want the one with the pink hair, right?
Yeah.
On that
So
note, it's like
yeah.
BTS has been like this global phenomenon for the past more than half, or just about a half decade, if not more. And so there really is this global force. You have Marvel coming out with Shang-Chi. That's the first Asian superhero on big screen, and so we're seeing a lot of these things collide, and Oni's really well positioned for that. Um, I think you guys have covered a lot of the points on Rebirth. Starlordy, before we go to the next question, I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that you want to talk about when it comes to Rebirth in the next chapter?
Sure. I think when it comes to the rebirth in the next chapter, the number one thing is that our community needs to know that we are not going to lose any of the stuff that they love. The stuff that makes us who we are is actually always going to stay the core. So the art, the storytelling, the anime influence, I think the community of artists, those are all things that we value very deeply. That we're instead of like we're just going to make that even more effective, right? Like we're going to make sure that what we do, what we were known for, what people already fell in love with, we're just going to give people more of that. So it's a rebirth, but it's also like a continuation of the things that people care about. But now we have the resources to scale it, to actually take it to the next level so that more people could fall in love and find new kind of entry points to join the ecosystem and stuff. So, it's what I learned about building communities. You just literally give people what they want. Give the stuff that they love, and make sure you do it better than the next person, and that's all you got to do.
So yeah, big focus on the community. And for the next piece, you know that we got together with 10KTF.
Mhm.
We actually have been included in the 10KTF storyline as captains. I don't know if you know that,
Nice.
but that was a very important piece. But in general, for the project, promoting the community's part of the story message, which is very powerful. My question is, do you have like similar plans for Oni, and how are you thinking about including community in the storytelling of Oni? If there is anything you can share about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, at least from my perspective, I think it's important to focus on innovating. I think our space is still very new and very, very early. So we still haven't even reached like a place where there's even any standards of anything. It's just a Wild West kind of. And so I think to win in this game, you have to constantly innovate. So when I think about innovation, I think not just about like technology, but it's like, how can we innovate on community engagement? How can we innovate on having the community actually be involved? How can we innovate the business model? And all of those things, if you can get them to work together, I think it's going to build a very powerful brand. So, we're going to make sure that not only are we including the community, but we're going to find a way to make sure that we drive value back to them when they do participate, when they are involved. So, for instance, we have our first community-led comic book project called Oni Hunter X, and literally every week we just sit down and we meet and we build a story together, and they're going to see that comic book published and distributed. It's going to be the first in the space to do that. And I think it's not just about Web3, it's about us like sending a shot across to Web2 to say to other companies like, hey, you might use the word community once in a while as like a marketing thing or something, but this is like our DNA. So like if you want to keep up with us, like you're going to have to like radically change your values, right? To keep up with us. Otherwise you're going to eventually get left behind, because in the future every fan is going to expect more of a direct participation with the brands they love. And that's where we want to really lead the charge there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, along that same vein, Starlordy, the other day on the space, you mentioned values are everything in this space, right? In the NFT space. And you've really had the chance to not just talk the talk, but to walk the walk, to lead by example with that, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. But like, what are some of the values you stand by? And as a leader, what values do you want to instill in the rebirth of Oni? We know values come in a lot of different way. And I'd like to hear kind of what that looks like in the future.
No, that's great. I think there's a couple things. I think number one, just always being authentic, being honest, being very clear. When you do say something, just make sure um, that you're doing it with the purest intentions, that it's always has the community in mind. But also being firm and strong. And, we have a business to run, so we have to make sure that the decisions we make are also very valid from a business standpoint. And I think, kind of like what Wei said, it's like, it's kind of crazy that we live in a space that just by like trying to do what you say, like you already like go way above and beyond other people. Because there's so many people that just literally like lie through their teeth, or like are just like, false prophets or something like that. So it's like kind of weird. Like just being a normal, good human being, like already makes you like special in this space. So I feel like when I say I go by values, I just literally, everything is literally by like a simple measurement of like, is this good for the community and the project, or is it not good? And just kind of use that to constantly weigh like if the answer is yes or no on what we do. Um, and frankly, that was a huge part of having this new ownership group. Is I think that from the get-go the vibe was very good and very positive. And as I said in the space before, it's like I wasn't sure if I was going to stick around. And then when Wei had sent an email about like wanting to make sure that we focus on like being positive and bringing hope to the space, and ended his email with "love is love," I was like, oh, that's the guy. Like that's like literally the guy. Like that's all I needed to hear, because it really showed like where his heart was. And I think like that those values inform like every decision we make. So you could know like if we drop like another collection, it's not because like, oh, we just want to make more money or something, because we don't care about that. It's because like it's going to be something you love, and it's going to like help like grow the project, or it's going to be an experience that you should really jump into. So I think we're going to constantly make decisions based on again, what's the intersection of what's best for the community and the project itself.
Awesome.
That's really cool. And I think Starlordy or Way, someone said it earlier that uh, people build things and teams build things. So
That
the
was Wei.
team is everything. That was Way. So
Mhm.
Way, let's start with you here. What does the current team look like, and in what areas are you guys looking to hire and bolster?
Yeah, we currently have Starlordy as the CEO, and then we also have a recent new hire
Champanini,
for for
community
CCO,
manager.
for also for creative artists, and then William signed up as CSO strategy. And then I think we have a few partnership hires. I think that we're looking at in Asia specifically. Looking at sort of key partnerships here in this region. Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're looking for two things from a need perspective. Correct me if I'm wrong, Henry. Um, One is we're basically building what I call like a sort of like an Oni council.
Mhm.
So this is kind of like some senior advisors that can help us to sort of either knock on doors or sort of like have breakthroughs. I think within the existing communities for NFTs. I think a combination of these things. And then secondly, I think we have a couple of sort of like people on the tech side that I think are continuing. But obviously, if there's any strong sort of tech talent that's interested, feel free to reach out. We're always on the lookout for that because I think that these things are going to stand out. So
Yeah, I think what I'll add to that is, we have increased the team a little bit. We have a really strong core that is ready to develop. At least my philosophy is that for any other needs that we have for permanent positions, we want to take our time, because like we want to make sure that we actually get like the best. Like we want to get really the right people on board. So until then, we have what we need to grow where we're at. And but like Wei said, we're always on the lookout. So if somebody pops up that's just like amazing and like clearly adds that value where they're gonna like 10x like what we can do, then we're gonna want to talk to them. So definitely like we'll have an open door policy there.
Great. Awesome. So let's talk a bit about NFT Paris.
Mm.
You participated this past days, and probably you got to meet a lot of people, listen to other people speak. What do you bring home from this experience? Is there anything that you learned like this past days that you were like, oh, okay, this we can use it for Oni. This is something that it's interesting in the space, just like something like that.
I think Wei should take that.
Or it was just parties and that's it.
No, you guys saw the videos, but yeah, thank God. You guys didn't see videos for the Fuzzy Penguin the God's Party, right? That
Yeah.
was I think has got like a couple of million
Yeah.
views already. And then I think it just it's giving NFT Paris a terrible name. But for me, look guys, I mean I came from the token world, right? I came from the crypto world, right? So for me, this was like the most aesthetically pleasing like event like that I've ever attended. Maybe it's Paris, maybe because it's NFT, but like yeah, it was like good looking people wearing good looking clothes, doing like things that are just like they're like things that I look around. It's like, ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. I think just like the energy is really amazing in the backdrop, right? And then the venue is amazing. Like you get basically like the backstage of the speakers is the Eiffel Tower, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a really sick like event and then I was able to sort of meet some of the OGs like in Luca and then in Frank. Didn't get to meet sort of Garga Greg, but sort of hear him speak. I think so for me it just sort of be like we have some really talented visionaries I think in this space right now. That's my takeaway. And then for me, it's like I mean I tell people that like why like because tell my investors, tell my sort of like my teams like why are we investing, like why don't we just invest in infrastructure, right? Why don't we invest in picks and shovels? Like why are you going specifically on an
The
NFT
easy
collection?
money.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, nah, dude, you guys don't understand. Like there is a lot to be said about being an OG collection. It's because like NFTs um it's like if crypto is like money on blockchain, right? And then and Ethereum, all that stuff is like like investments on blockchain, right? And then now NFT is basically culture on blockchain, right? That I mean that's all we're doing right now. We're basically putting everything that we have in our like on blockchain, right? And we're just getting started. It's just JPEGs right now. I think down the road, everything that is culturally relevant and you want to capture that at that time, at that place, it's going to be an NFT. Like it's just going to be the word is just going to be very different in its meaning. I think that's sort of like the way I see it, right? And then you kind of feel that, when you do these events, right? You have like what is it? I learned a new word, POAP. That's my
Oh shit.
I love
proof
it.
of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
attendance. What
yeah.
is it? I forget the last P, but everybody's offering POAPs to me. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Co-op,
cool.
co-ops.
Scan
Yeah.
me for a
They're
POAP.
like,
I'm
what is
like,
that? Why are you asking me for my wallet?
yeah. I was like, what's a POAP? I had to look up a lot of words. Yeah, I felt like I'm like an old guy, like showing up at like a high school like pep rally, and then I'm just like, what are they saying?
Yeah. Terminology is
Honestly,
not
that was
easy.
me in the beginning of Only Force 2 is I would be in the Discord and people would be saying stuff and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'm like quietly Googling. I'm like, did they just insult me or were they saying something nice? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. But no, but I think I mean, they had people from like obviously because of France, they had people from the top fashion houses there, like they had people from Adidas there. So I think there's a lot of interest, despite sort of the bear market, right? Yeah, and so I think I mean it's a lot of takeaways, but I think the most important takeaway is I think the energy overall is very positive. So if that speaks for anything, and then this was in the middle of like basically like apes being like 200 apes being dumped on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Right in
that
the
was
middle of the
great.
night, you wake up, you're like, what
What
just
happened?
happened? Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, so like this industry, man, it's just yeah, something new always comes up. That's my takeaway. Yeah, yeah, that mean that's what makes it exciting, right? I think
Yeah.
that's why we're all here. Like like if we like boring lives, then we wouldn't be here. So
Yeah.
We'd be accountants right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
so
And
yeah, so sorry, just last point. I'm rambling, but I do
yeah,
think that it's like actually for me like the biggest takeaway like from an Oni's perspective is sort of like I really wanted to sort of like learn from other communities. I really wanted to learn sort of like who are the KOLs, who are the whales, who are the influencers, just sort of like at least get a feel of the land, right? Hung out with some like like went to some of these parties and just be like and then actually learned about like what was good, what was bad, what people like, what people didn't like. So for me, it's just sort of like like I was just soaking it all in, right? So yeah, and then sending some notes back to the team as well. So
Awesome. And what about like meeting other projects? Like you talked about Luca, for example, and Luca and Pudgy Penguins talk about being in the same team with the gods, for example, like as an NFT team. So multiple projects working together towards things. Does Oni have some kind of interest in collaborating with other big projects, or did you get like in conversation with other founders for doing something like that? If you can share.
I don't know how much we
I'll
could
let you take
share,
that,
but we're
Starlordy.
definitely open
Yeah.
to collabs, right, Wei?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, yeah. And I think the quick answer is yes. No specific details. I think just literally just met people for the first time, right? And then I think a lot of it just a lot of it. I think that the key of some of these like IRL, like in what is it, in person things, face to face things, is just to build trust.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're like when you grab a drink with someone, like you see how they behave in a jungle, then you kind of realize what kind of person this is. You're like, okay, all
Yeah,
right,
that's
I
true.
get it. You're like, all right, I've been around the block a couple of times.
Yeah.
I've been in the jungle, so
Which is actually so interesting because it's in such a digital first space,
uh-huh.
with NFTs, with Twitter, and even Zoom meetings. That's something that you really can't tell until you meet people in person, and it's why
Mhm.
these in-person events are so interesting. This actually, it's a question for later on, but I'll ask it now, and then Diamond, you can come back to the physicals question. But it's been a while that Oni has had like a premiere party, let's call it an in-person event, and I can see Starlordy smiling in a way, has a big smile on his face. So I wanted to ask. I'm sure the community has been clamoring for this. All the holders want to be able to meet each other at
Mhm.
an Oni focused event. And so, is there? I mean, I'm sure that's on the roadmap. Is there anything that you can share, anything that you can tease, or get the community excited for?
I think first of all, there is a little trauma around events because like last time with the previous founders, they did spend a bunch of money on an event when they were like in the middle of tanking. So there is a
Mhm.
part of the community that's like, okay, be careful how you spend the money, right? Like, and the other thing is like, at least personally, my philosophy is like, um, I'm not a huge fan of throwing events just because I feel like having a presence at events is really important. I do think at some point, if we have the right milestones that we could hit, I think it would be worth throwing like a really big event. But until then, uh, I personally would rather focus on intimate things. So, we are planning like, for instance, at NFTLA, an intimate event where it's more like kind of like Wei said, like building trust, right? We want to make sure we invite the right people in. They have to get to know us because, like, if you're like a big fan of Oniforce, like you're already ready to go. You're ready to be like, all right, let's do this. Like, we're going to the moon now that we have the right team. However, if you think about the greater space, other project founders and other people who watch the mismanagement of the company, I think they're going to need a little bit more time to get to know us and really have a little bit of a track record to see like, okay, this is how these guys execute. These guys keep to what they say. So I think that's why we're going to focus more on intimate things where we could, get that FaceTime with the right people and then just have a presence at events. And yeah, I would love to do a big, huge event eventually, but there's definitely nothing planned at this moment. So I don't want to get people's hopes up. Like at NFT LA, we're gonna like have like 10,000 people in a party with Wiz Khalifa show up or something. Like it's not gonna happen at NFT LA. But we'll definitely work hard to get the brand to a place where we will feel comfortable with something like special. It'll be whenever does happen someday. It will be very special for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just echo what Starley said. I think you got to learn. Oh, is it? You got to crawl before you walk, right? And then
Mm.
and the guys that are doing things now, they're throwing. Some of the stuff is like there's big time budgets with
Mm-hmm.
like full time professional planners. I think so. That's why I think for us, the initial focus maybe just more small, more curated. I mean, we did have a private meetup on Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 30-40 people showed up.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was just like a general sort of like I think like like we're learning to crawl right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but for me, I love a good party. So
Let's go.
yeah.
Let's go. Let's
Let's
manifest it
go.
eventually. But we gotta get like a really healthy place where the whole
You
For
community
gotta.
sure.
feels like
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
Yeah,
deserved.
but
For sure.
we're all olders, and we would really like to go to Oni party.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, real quick, where are you guys all located? I'm just curious.
I'm in New York City.
Okay.
Humboldt County,
Diamond.
far northern California.
Humble and where?
I'm all over, but like based in Toronto, but I've been nomading, and so like I'm going a bunch of different places in
Okay.
like the eastern western time zone.
Okay, just curious. I'll make sure I invite
Yeah.
you guys when we show up somewhere.
Hey, if you have
Yeah,
anything
that'd be
in the
amazing.
if you have anything in the
Mhm.
Bay Area, Starlordy, just holler. I'll make a little trip down. We'll party. We'll make
Let's
it
do
happen,
it.
you know?
All right.
Yeah, we just did a trip down to LA for the 10K ETF event, so
Nice.
we're ready to fly and wherever
Okay.
wherever
You guys will
you guys
definitely
need
be
us.
on our VIP list, so don't even worry about
Oh
it.
man, oh man, thank you. Yeah,
Great.
I just want to talk about physicals. Like physicals are a very important part of NFTs and media as well. What plans do y'all have as far as pushing Oni as a comic, as physical merchandise? I saw I Am Complex had a little bit of a figurine going on, and like I was peering at that stuff too. So just kind of want to see what the future of Oni merchandise, Oni physicals looks like, and where y'all hope to be 3 to 5 years from now.
Whoa, 3 to 5 years. That's like how many thousands of years in Web3?
Long game.
Comic books are definitely going to be our first physical. Comic books are an important part of us developing the IP. I think once you launch the IP in a real way, especially since we are launching in Web 2 in the real world, as they say, that will naturally lead to opportunities for us to develop other merch. I definitely don't want to tip our hands too early on that because people get their hopes up like for it to come out tomorrow. So I think like kind of like Wei said, is like we're still learning to crawl in the sense that even though yes, this brand has been around, people know it. It is a rebirth. Like again, the acquisition literally just completed, so it's kind of like we still have to develop this brand. What I am willing to say is that if you think about the natural progression of merch development that our community likes, whether it's up clothing or toys or art prints, that sort of stuff, I'd say it's all on the table and it'll just come as it's warranted. I think the other thing is we got to make sure that we have the demand for the things we do, especially toys. Like I did dive into toys and did a lot of research on it. It does take a lot of work to get those launched. And the last thing we want is to shoot ourselves in the foot by trying to launch something that's going to take a lot of time and resources and we don't have like the full demand there. So I think for me, I want to see how the community responds to this rebirth. I want to see how many people are truly engaged. And we want to really build those, like, not to steal 10 KTF, but we want to build those 10,000, true fans, right? Like we want to make sure that like we have the fans there and that, basically once they're like banging on the door and like willing to like rip the doors down to get something, like we'll probably have to do it. But we want to make sure our people are very, very ready for it,
Yeah, and just it's real quick. I mean, what I love hearing in from Wei as well, like the business perspective of this, right? Like we're degen, so we all love some hype. Y'all know we love some speculation, we love some hype, we love all that, right? But like really working through this methodical business perspective, what's right when the right time is, not just to have a moment to push a little hype into the market. And I absolutely love hearing that. I really think it's a foundational piece for sustainable NFT companies, to be honest. And I don't know, just with removing the hype cycle pieces and looking at the long-term vision, maybe not 3 to 5 years, we better dial that back. Like you'll say, we're just getting ready to crawl. What do y'all, maybe in the next 6 months, in the next year, what's coming around the corner? What are y'all most excited about?
I actually want to talk a little bit about what I see sort of like this space evolves into down the road,
Yeah.
like 3 years down the road. And then I think see how, and then where sort of like, I think Oni fits in that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Cause I think, one of the takeaways from at this conference is pretty much, a lot of the guys here have laid out, their own roadmaps, right? Whether it's, gaming and metaverse for Yuga Labs. And then for Pudgy Penguin is like, toys is going to be like, and licensing is going to be a big part of that. And then for Azuki, you basically see, like, just having really cool shit is like, whatever that is, whether it's a skateboard or a jacket or a hat or whatever it is, that's a big part of that, right? I think each one is sort of like, is carving up its own sort of space. Like you're in the jungle and you're just carving, right? You're covering a path for yourself, right? And then maybe all of us are gonna, and then I think we're starting to carve sort of our road in the jungle, and then we're all gonna meet in like, in in Valhalla in like, in a couple of years. And I think where it's gonna take us there is actually, I think, do you have the right and I'm like, do you have the right governance? I think that's actually really important. I think for us, a lot of projects don't work out just because of, ownership, governance, time, money, resources, right? And I think that's something that, we've self-corrected already on that path, right? And then we're in the path of building a governance council, right? That in my mind, that, all of these projects down the road is gonna behave like one project that I've, been sort of, I'm an owner of, but then kind of been half looking at it, is actually Nouns DAO, right? They actually, I mean, you can say what you say about sort of they're kind of all over the places ish, but they do have an actual functional DAO, and they're very well resourced. They have like 10,000, 20,000 ETH like in their treasury that the DAO can figure out how to deploy, right? And I think that type of governance is that's what I call sort of like crypto native governance, right? You're not going to have like board of directors, you're not going to have like venture capital, you're not going to have like IPO plans and stuff like that. Like I actually think like, like if we're going to be a blockchain native company, we're going to have like think very differently about sort of governance, right? And I think that's something that, could be a massive advantage, because that gives both team runway, it gives teams, direction, and gives them confidence, and it attracts, other people to come because you do have stability, right? And I think that's something that is that we can, lead the pack on, right? So that's just sort of like, and you're seeing that, I think, like, like you're seeing that with Yuga Labs, right? I think they've done a really good job in terms of, setting up the right governance structure. I mean, obviously you still have, leadership figures like Greg that actually run the ship, and then they actually have professionals they have to bring on board to deliver products, right? But the mix of that, I think, is actually really, really, really important. And I think that's something that, that maturation process is what we hope to build.
Oh,
I love that. I think if you're asking like years down the line, obviously it's hard to predict because the space evolves like crazy. And this is just my personal take, is that I would like to see us, first of all, this is not, how do I say this in the most, we are the original anime PFP. I would like for us to regain our position and respect in that manner. I think there's plenty of room. Like the way I look at, for instance, anime itself, it's like people love every show. They love Naruto, they love One Piece, they love Demon Slayer. It's not like there's a direct competition. It's more like it's love, right? Like love is love. And so I think that is what we want to grow in this space. At the same time, the competitive part of me is kind of like that Kobe, where it's like, yeah, let's all get on the court, but like we got to be the king, you know what I'm saying? Like we got to win, So like if it's a competition, so I think it's important for us to kind of now why I'm saying that kind of softly is like I want it to be a natural result of our hard work and our vision. I don't want it to be like, oh, we're just trying to compete and dunk on people, or it's like that sort of thing. It's more like I see in however long, maybe 3 years or so, you see the trends of anime and NFTs adoption. Like eventually they're going to meet. Like eventually all anime fans are going to all be into NFTs and digital collectibles and the community and all that stuff. And I think if Oni Force is leading that charge, if we are truly like going where the puck is headed, then I think it'll just be natural. The results will speak for themselves. So I think that's kind of my personal philosophy as the CEO is to work really hard for that future, but not get caught up in the details of like looking at what other people are doing or comparing ourselves and stuff like that. That part is not important to me.
That's very well said. I just want to jump in on that. I think that's it's something that I think we think about as well, is there's a lot of micro competition, but in the macro sense, we're all headed towards, like, if one project wins, it will trickle down and other projects will win in the macro sense. Because, and I
Exactly.
think you
For sure.
said this, you got a very team NFTs feel at NFT Paris, where it's like different projects, founders supporting each other and their projects, because it's us against the world in a sense, not us against each other.
Right. I mean, the last thing I'll add to that is I realized the difference in this space is that if you hold our project, you probably hold other projects. So it doesn't, like, when I think of projects, I think of the community first. I don't actually even think of the founders first. I don't think of the team first. I think of the community first. Like, for instance, when that scandal happened with Azuki, like, there was a part of our community that was definitely like, oh, it's time to dunk on them, because we had been getting dunked on for like all year, right? Like, just memes and whatever. Like, anytime somebody brings up Oniforce, they would just immediately smash on us. And I immediately put a statement out saying, like, look, like, let's actually remember that this is hurting people, right? Like, this is actually hurting other people. Let's be kind to them. And, like, ironically, like, the Oniforce Discord was literally the safest place for Azuki holders during that time, because they were like literally coming in, like, old Oniforce holders were coming into our Discord and just kind of like hanging out with us. And that's when it really hit me that it's like, in this space, it's like, it's not a zero-sum game in that sense. Like, if you treat it like a zero-sum game, you're probably not going to make it, because you need to care about the whole. And that means everybody in every community. And I think if we focus on that, by the time mass adoption comes in, it'll be like a really beautiful place for them to come into, like, that's kind of what I think.
And I just love the way that earlier you said love is love in the middle of what you were talking about earlier, right? And like I saw Netta smiling when you said it too, and it's just like what that means for what we're trying to do culturally, right? Like, this isn't about one box or the other. This is about the circle,
Right.
and what we can do,
Right.
and that's where we're trying to take this place. We have the world at our fingertips right now, and we can choose value with a dollar sign at the end, or we can choose values that matter to everyone. And I really think
Right.
that's where the real opportunity, that's where the real sauce of our space really lies right now. And I literally have chills going down my neck right now. So I just wanted to give a shout out, like, getting it right, and the founders that get it, projects that get it. It's not about one group or the other. We got to continue to expand cultural horizons, and that just doesn't mean within our own in groups. I'm so excited to see where the future of Oniforce is headed, Starlordy. Oh goodness, let's fucking
It's
go.
true, man. Let's go. When Wei wrote that, I was ready to run through a brick wall for him. I was like, all right, let's go. Like, literally that.
Let me save up more. Let me save up more. Give me a second. I got a few more tweets on my
amazing
back.
quotes though, saying that culture's on the blockchain, like love is love. I think these are the things that we're building day by day, right? Like, the more that we spread this message out to people, we are building the industry. I think that's important to remember.
This question is a curiosity that I have, but I want to ask because I know so many other people are curious about this. Some time ago, we saw in the Oni map New Tokyo being in there. So you kind of included a piece of New Tokyo inside the Oni map. We know that New Tokyo now it's getting included in the other side. So it's like a big thing with all these projects connected. The question is Oni gonna be on the other side? Is there anything going on in there? Can we expect the project to have some kind of collaboration in that space as well?
I don't know if we could talk about that yet. I think
Please, you can.
I'm apologizing. I'll dodge the answer a little bit by saying that we're still open to any and all possibilities that make sense for us. I think, obviously, I have paid attention to other side, and hey, if enough community members get loud about it, then maybe they'll get to hear some good news. But I think, for us, we still have to be very careful, because even if we say we're thinking about something or we might be doing something, a lot of people take that as like, okay, tomorrow they're launching this. Like, we can't. We gotta be super careful.
Yeah, speculation is wild.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally fair.
That being said, we did see, I mean, that Oni in Oni's map, we saw New Tokyo, right? And also in New Tokyo, we've seen the Enclave as well, right? So like,
Right.
wink,
Yeah.
wink, who knows what might happen? Nobody knows, right? But all things are open in the future. And I love hearing that. That's amazing. Let's go.
We
Well,
obviously love 10KTF. So, I mean,
But
the
go
best I
right
could
back.
say is their team has been incredibly kind to us. They've been very supportive of everything we do. Now that we have new leadership and strong leadership, I think that opens up the door for us to have new conversations with all types of parties. So 10KTF is definitely going to be included on that list, pretty much at the top of the list.
we
Awesome.
love to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, last question for the night. We know that the royalty wars have been raging. What? It's one shot here, blur there, OpenSea then, and my question is, and feel free to answer, and this is for the both of you, Wei and Starlordy, and feel free to answer it in whichever way you want. But it's clear that at this point in time, royalties as a reliable revenue source is a little bit more in question. And so, how are you guys thinking about that as you think about the business out of Oni and how to make this into a business that generates revenue?
Yeah, we signed our deal the day like Blur came out, and then when we signed it and we paid, we funded it as the day OpenSea said, oh, we're going to 0.52. and and then it kind of reminded me of like, man, put up a fight, guys. Come
Yeah.
on. I actually think like I don't know what that number is. I think the market is going to determine whatever that number is going to come out to be, right? And I think whether it's I think maybe 5% just was too high, right? Like maybe it's gonna come down to whatever. But like it's an X axis is volume and the Y axis is percentage, right? Volume goes up, percentage goes down. Volume goes down, percentage goes up. Wherever you are on that sliding scale, there needs to be like an equilibrium at some point, right? Because I think creators do need to get compensated for our work. I think for us to have resources to deploy things, to throw really cool parties. I think and to do events and to do a lot of these initiatives, right? I think royalties, but if royalties is your only source of revenue and only source of income, then I don't think that's gonna fly down the road. And so I'll pause at that in terms of but that being said, I think the NFT marketplace wars is just gonna get started, right? Yeah, I think you're gonna see a lot more NFT marketplaces, and then yeah, and I think that's where the opportunity then comes for us, as a premium collection, and that hey, guess what? A lot of them want to distribute that content to their users as well, right? And I think it's not just going to be yeah, and I think that's going to be the interesting part. So I'll stop there before I sort of talk too much, but I just think like for us, our goal is to diversify, I think, our revenue base. But of course, if you lower the threshold, lower the hurdle, I think you're gonna have more people owning it. I think that's probably a good thing. Right. So, OpenSea getting rid of the 2.5% transaction fee, that's probably a good thing. That does lower the hurdle. And then what I said earlier about there's going to be more liquidity coming into this space, putting sort of token trading mechanics into for NFTs, that's a natural event that's going to introducing more liquidity into the market. Right. And then when you have that type of liquidity, you're going to have, more active lending platforms in the NFT space as well. So I think all of that is going to happen. Hopefully we all learn our lesson with lending and centralized lending and all that stuff, but who knows? But at least I think right now, these things are coming, right? Just that's the brutality of capital, right? So yeah. So for us, that's why I think net as an investor, I actually think, like owning a premium real estate, owning a premium asset in this space, is really cool. And that's why I think like, for NFT investors and collectors, it's going to be really cool too. Because one thing I wanted to jump on is uh, why I don't think it's going to be an issue from a royalty perspective is we get paid in ETH. Name another thing in the world that you get paid in ETH. I love ETH. We get paid in ETH, man. Like name another, like I mean, that's why I think, like, like if you get paid in ETH, that's like a natural leverage on like the future of
Yeah.
of the Ethereum ecosystem, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's just sort of like, that's why I think it's really that's one thing that, once we started seeing some of the numbers coming in, are like, oh my gosh, everything's in ETH. It's just so cool. And I think like, Raoul Pal said something about NFTs as like, it's the only asset class right now that is denominated in ETH. Right, it's not denominated in US dollar. It's not denominated in any fiat currency. People quote NFTs in ETH, right, and that's huge, because if you get the sort of the future upside in ETH, right, and then you also get the future potential upside, and if ETH goes up, obviously more people gonna want to buy more stuff, and then we're like Manhattan real estate, dude. So I think that that sort of, and that's from an individual collectors. That's why I think from individual collectors, like, that's going to be good. And if that's the case, then we will have the financial withdrawal, I think, to do a lot of these things that we talked about here. So yeah. So as I'm talking up, I'm talking up the NFT space, right? That's where.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. I think diversifying is important. I actually never, when I, started working on the kind of roadmap, I actually never factored in trade volume in our revenue. Not even before the wars started happening. I just never, like, the first time a marketplace even toyed with the idea of going to zero, I was like, well, clearly it's going to happen then, right? Like, because that's the way it works. So I just took that out of my mind. It's like, if that's part of your calculation, you're probably in trouble. The way I look at it personally is like, all wars are culture wars, actually, if you think about it. So you're going to see the marketplace wars heat up. It's going to be a lot of ideology being thrown around. But I do think at some point the market's going to determine what they think is a fair rate, because in the end, the market will also realize that if creators aren't able to create, there's nothing for them to even trade, right? So there's going to have to be some symbiosis. I don't think it's going to be 5%, because once you get a taste of zero, you don't go all the way back up to 5%, right? That's okay. That's part of it. But really, the reason why I'm not worried is that from the get-go, even when I was brought on as project manager, I said that we have to learn how to make money like a real company in a Web 2 way, as so to speak, to survive. If you cannot figure out those revenue streams, then your trade volume is going to eventually die anyways. And then the other thing that I think gives us an advantage over time is that if you look at Star Wars, if you look at Marvel, if you look at any premium IP, do you see them having any trouble taking people's money in? Like, no. Like, the fans support these brands, right? Like, the fans make sure that brands survive. I'm still firmly focused on making sure that, number one, our community gets like the most amazing storytelling and art that in this space, so that we're top tier, right? Number two, expanding aggressively, developing the IP in Web 2 through the comic books and all the other things. Now, it's not easy to do, but if we can hit those marks, the revenue will just take care of itself. Like, what I learned is if you build a really strong brand in a community, the revenue opportunities just present themselves to you, and you don't have to really like force yourself for it. So I think other projects that don't have strong IPs or don't have naturally attractive like art or storytelling, I think it's actually going to be harder for them, because they're going to have to figure out how to deliver value that doesn't exist. But we're inherently, our value is already in the art and storytelling. So we just have to focus on maximizing that. And trade volume to me is just bonus,
Yeah, and your value is also in the provenance as one of the OG NFT collections,
Exactly.
as the first anime collection.
Correct.
Way Starlordy, you guys have been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. We
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We're excited to see what the rebirth of Oni looks like in the coming months and years, and
Mm-hmm.
excited to meet the both of you at
In
the
person.
next in-person event, whatever
Yes,
that is.
absolutely. We'll be in touch for sure. Thanks so much for your time, guys.
That's good, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
care.
so much. Take care.
All right.